we're going to talk with somebody very important. We're going to talk with somebody who was on the guest list to many of the classic clubs of the New York scene, many of the incredible legendary artists of New York. Let's welcome to Totally Driven Radio, the one, the only, Maryanne Christiano Mistretta, right?
Hi, so great to be here.
How you doing, Maryanne?
Oh, fantastic, and even more so now that you mentioned the Runaways. I love the Runaways, and I have a Joan Jett story in my book, so off to a good start. Hello? Hello? Hello?
Okay, let's see. Maryanne, you still there?
Yes,
wow.
What happened?
Oh, wow. Have you ever dealt with Blog Talk Radio before?
Yes.
It's the worst. I love them, but it's the worst. Look, okay, the phone was kicking you off, and my co-host got kicked off. Let me see. Let me tell him to call back in right now. Oh, boy. You know, we used to have so many problems, and we just had a good run of about 6 months, and it just, see that?
Oh, wow.
Oh, all right. So
just as we were talking about how cool the Runaways were.
Yeah, right? You know what it is? It's Joan Jett, because we had both Cherie and we had Lita on here. And Lita was like, please, get Joan. Talk to Joan for us. We want to do it. And it was funny because that next day, my wife helps us as our PR person, and my wife called Joan's management, and they were like, we've been waiting for you to call.
Oh, wow.
But Joan turned us down. They called us back 2 weeks later and said, yeah, she turned us down, and she doesn't want to get back with the Runaways, so don't ask. I was like, oh. So, but did you have a better experience than we did?
I had 2 great experiences. The first time I was a teenager, and I saw her at a little club in New Jersey called Hole in the Wall. And are we still on? Oh, okay, you're here.
Yeah,
okay, I was sort of blocked out again. And I was right in the front. And she's only a couple of years older than me, and she's so cute and adorable. And I was right in front of the stage, and she held her guitar out in front of me and let me play her guitar. I'm not a musician, but I just strummed it a few times, and then she pulled it away, and that was a cool experience. Then the next time I met her was at a vegetarian party because she's a vegetarian. It was in New York City. And I went up to her and I said, I'm a great fan of your work. And then my husband took my picture with her, but I was so shy because she's Joan Jett, and I didn't know what else to say to her. I just smiled, but she was so nice and very gracious to her fans and very nice lady.
Yeah, it's funny you said that too. Like when you get to meet somebody like that, I mean, Joan Jett, legend. She's a legend.
Yep.
And when you have that experience, like, what are you supposed to say? Like,
I would have asked her for change for the jukebox.
Yeah, right. It's funny because, like, when I met Nikki Sixx, it was like the same thing. Like, I'm in a book signing line, and you have like hundreds of people behind you, and you have like that 1 minute of conversation with the person. What could you say in 1 minute?
Yeah, that's why it's good to be a journalist, because then you get like 45 minutes.
Right. So why did you go into the journalist field? And being the person who was on the guest list and a music journalist, did you ever want to be the music person instead of the journalist?
Yes. Early on I did, but I found out right away 2 things about myself. That number 1, I have no rhythm and no musical talent, so it would be a hard career for me. And number 2, I work better on my own. So if I'm writing an article or a book, I'm by myself. It doesn't have to be a joint effort like if you're a musician. So it wasn't in the cards for me. I'm just quite happy being a fan and being a journalist and an author.
So, well, I mean, I guess that's understandable, and you're one of the people that don't play well with others, then, right?
Exactly.
So when did you get started as a journalist?
I was a late bloomer, but I did start writing fanzines, helping people write fanzines when I was 17 years old. I got locked in Max's, Kansas. That's one of the fun stories in my book when I was a writer early on trying to interview people. I met Johnny Thunders, Cheetah Chrome from the Dead Boys, Jerry Nolan, Walter Lure. And one night I was just up in the VIP room helping a friend write a fanzine, and the next thing you knew, everybody was gone and we were locked in. So we had to break out of the famous Max's, Kansas City.
Oh, that's awesome. Wait, and then, you were locked in there with them guys?
No. After they left. We were bad. We were going through their files looking for phone numbers of punk rockers and other musicians that we could call and interview for our fanzine. I mean, we didn't steal anything. We just took a bunch of numbers from the Rolodex, and then so we were oblivious to what was going around us. And then the next thing we knew was we were locked in.
Wow.
Yeah, and then we had to break out, and the cops came, and we ran. We just took off, and we didn't get caught. We didn't get arrested. But the punchline is, many years later, when I was in my mid-30s, Yvonne Sewall, who actually was a waitress at Max's, Kansas, and she was married to Mickey Ruskin, who owned the club, and he had since passed. She was writing a book about like stories, people and their experiences at Max's, and I told her that story. She said, "That's a great story. You have to put that in the book." So I wrote it up for her, but for some reason the editor cut the story. So my story's not in there, but just a picture of me and Cheetah Chrome. So I'm like, "Gee, thanks, editor." Now everyone thinks I'm a groupie, and I wasn't a groupie. It was just really just like hanging out because we were interviewing him.
Okay, well, you mentioned one of my all-time favorites in that list of names that you mentioned, and that's the one, the only legendary Johnny Thunders.
Oh, cool.
How was it meeting Johnny?
It was exciting because, don't forget, I was only 17 years old, and I was just really into punk rock and the New York Dolls and the Johnny Thunders solo album, the So Alone. That was one of my favorite albums, and it still is. And
I have that album hanging in my basement.
It was so well produced, and Steve Jones played on it, and he's one of my favorite musicians also. And he was nice to us because we were young girls, but he didn't say much. He was very quiet. He didn't want to be interviewed, but Jerry Nolan said, "Oh, I'll get Johnny to do an interview with you." He promised us he would, but then a couple days later, it was so bizarre, and just a time frame of like less than a week, Max is closed down for good.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we were so lucky we caught the tail end of it and that whole scene, but we never got the Johnny Thunders interview.
Reading the books that have come out over the years about Johnny and the Dolls and all, he just seemed like reading them books especially about Johnny, it was just like a sad life the guy led. That's what it seemed like to me.
Yeah, the little that I've known about him, and also too, in later years, I became friends with Serinda Fox before she died. I interviewed her for Punk Magazine's website, and she had nothing but good to say about him. She said he was a lovely person.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Now, being like a journalist, now when did you actually what era was this around? In the 80s that you started?
I started the fanzine. That was the very early 80s. And then I didn't finish college, so I just worked in office jobs until maybe like early 30s. Then I started writing for magazines, and that's when I really was able to put it together, put the writing, the creativity in the writing, and the music together. My first worldwide published article was interviewing Max from Sepultura.
Okay.
They were like, he was a very, very nice spiritual person, and I did it for a magazine called In the Flesh. It was a body-piercing tattoo magazine, and it was a very nice layout. There were a ton of pictures and a very long question-and-answer kind of interview. And then after I did that, I was so, proud of myself. This is really cool. This is what I want to do. And then I did a lot of writing for magazines, newspapers. And then that was it from like age 30 on, and I'm 50 now, so I've been doing this for about almost 20 years.
Now, was it a lot, like, before the Internet, I would think that it would be a lot harder to get started as a journalist?
Yes, it was. I remember sending out query letters in manila envelopes back in those days. Yeah. So it's like you had to wait. And I remember when I got my first rejection letter, it's an honor to get a rejection letter because then it means they actually took you seriously enough to write that letter. So I don't know if magazines still operate the same way, but back then rejection letters meant you were one step closer to your goal.
It's funny too because, like, I guess it was about 10 years ago. Like, for the hell of it, I went to see the Murder Dolls in concert, and I wrote a review up, and I said, you know what, I'll send it out to like a website, and I sent it to them, and they published it online. I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. Oh. And then I sent it out to some more, and then more started. I was like, So then, like, every concert I would go to, I'd start reviewing concerts. And then next thing I know, like, websites are like, well, you want to review CDs? And I'm getting, like, CDs in the mail, and I'm reviewing CDs. And they're like, oh, here, you want to go interview this person? And they would send me to a concert and interview this person. And I was like, this is pretty cool. But first off, I never got paid for it, so it was pure just excitement.
Aww.
But
you have to get paid.
That was the thing. I was trying to figure out, how do I turn this into getting paid now? And I just never did because work just took over my life, and here I am.
Oh, well, you have a great radio show.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
So did you do, like, was it just interviews or reviews as well, or? Everything,
but I preferred interviews the most. Well, I liked writing about concerts, but then that kind of gets old after a while. I just love to talk to people, and I'm like the person who's very curious. I'll get people to tell me things that they wouldn't tell anybody else, so I'm very great at it. I've never misquoted anybody. One time I interviewed Fred Norris from the Howard Stern show when he was doing his King Norris act, and he said,
"Sure."
You're such a great journalist. You're the only one who ever got it right. I'm reading this article to my 3-year-old daughter, and this was like about 10 years ago, so she must be 13 by now. But I took that as such a compliment, and that what he said was true because I take a sense of pride in my work that I don't misquote people. I'm a great listener, and I really enjoy bringing out things in other people, and that's just not in my career, that's in real life too.
Sure.
I like to just be that good friend,
And that's the way, like, when you're interviewing people, I mean, that's the way you got to be. Like, and it's funny because, like, we have like this little network that we're doing now, and my daughter, who's 16, she just started doing her own show about like anime and cosplay, and she's all into that whole world.
Wow.
And she started doing interviews, and she's done 2 interviews so far, and that's the first thing I tell her all the time. I say, make sure you're listening to what is being said, because whatever questions you do have written down, you're going to end up getting double the questions out of just listening to what is said.
That's true. That's great advice.
Now, the one thing that I like when I was doing reviews and stuff, and I'm sure any reviews you've probably felt the same way, like, especially if you start becoming friendly with these people and you're going out to see them play and they're expecting you to write this great review, and it could be like a bad show. And then it's like, like you're almost like put in a spot. You don't want to say nothing bad about them, but you don't want to lie. So have you ever been put in that situation?
Only once. I used to write off-Broadway theater for a New York newspaper, and this one play, I thought it was going to be great, but then we got there and it was so tragic. It was just horrible. And they sent me an email, oh, did you ever review the play? And I just ignored them, and that's the only time in my life. Because usually I go with an open mind with things, like I take into consideration if someone's new, they're just starting out. And also, too, I always stuck to interviewing people and reviewing things that I did enjoy, so I knew going in that I would like it. Although sometimes there were, times where maybe an album disappointed me, and one of my editors Mark Porter from the Montclair Times, he said that my best writing came when I was disappointed. He said, Mira, when you're upset or you're really pissed off, he goes, that comes like your really good writing comes from that. Although I prefer to write about positive things.
Sure.
I don't always want to be like the negative reviewer. Other people are great at it. Like, for instance, when The Runaways first came out, I'm not sure I think it was Robert Christgau. I'm not sure if it was him, but in Cream magazine, he wrote like one line, "These bitches suck." And even though I disagreed, I thought it was the greatest review ever. It was like one line, "These bitches suck." And I was just like, I remember that when I was 12 years old. Like, wow, what a great review. I think it was Robert Christgau, but I'm not positive it was. It could have been somebody else.
That's
so
awesome.
Don't quote me on that, but it was like the best review ever.
It's funny too, because when I started doing reviews, like, I would do like these long, intricate reviews, and then I like really learned like it was too much. Like, the shorter the better, and short, to the point, and throw some good catchy one-liners in there, and that was it. That's all that was needed. And he did it all in one line and summed it all up.
Yep.
In his opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, because you'd have like these, because in some places they don't go by word count, they go by inches. So like you'd have maybe these, 7-inch reviews in Cream magazine, like really long reviews for bands and for records. And then you'd have these other ones that were like one sentence, and those were the ones you read because they were so short.
Sure.
Yeah.
Now, did you ever have any artists like try to schmooze you to get good reviews out of you, or a good interview out of you?
No, that never happened. Everyone, knock wood, I've been fortunate. Everyone was always professional. I've had some experiences with bands that weren't as known, where maybe someone would complain like, "Oh, you talked more about the guitar player than you talked about me," like something like that. Like they complain I didn't talk about them enough. But no, I never had any complaints. One of the, no, I wouldn't say the worst, but an awkward experience was when I interviewed Janice Ian. She was traveling. She was driving across the desert, and her cell phone kept cutting out, and I couldn't ask her everything I wanted to. And when I thought about it, the whole phone call was maybe 10 minutes of interruptions, so I had nothing to go on. But I just saved the day by doing a lot of research and throwing in a few things she said to me, and it was
nice.
A good article. So
cool.
Yeah,
I guess that's the part where being a professional comes in.
Yeah, definitely.
So the book now, what made you want to write the book?
I never wanted to write a book. I was just happy being a journalist. I could be happy being a journalist till I die. I don't care. I didn't want to write a book. But a lot of people were saying, those are a lot of great stories. It was a good time to be alive, being young in the 80s. And I just had a lot of cute, fun stories I wanted to share. And Judy McGuire, who wrote a column, Date Girl, in the New York Press, she said that she endorsed my book. She was one of the endorsers. She said the great thing about the book is that it's not like other rock and roll memoirs where there's a downward spiral into drugs and addiction. She's like, you stayed positive through the whole book. And I think that's why a lot of people are embracing it, because there's so many positive stories. And I encourage, in the first couple pages, I say to other people, I would love for everyone to write a book like this, to share your stories. This is just my version. I would love if every person out there wrote their book and I could hear their version of it.
Yeah, but would you want everybody to be a positive book like yours, though? I mean, you touched on something really important there, and it's the truth. And that's all I read. As a matter of fact, I was at a convention this past weekend, and the guy was, he had a table set up with all of his books, and they were all fictional books, and he was trying to sell me on these books, and I'm like, I don't want to be rude, but all I read is biographies. He's like, oh, I got nothing for you then. I'm like, exactly. And 90% of my biographies I read are rock influenced, and you are exactly right, because every one of them leads into a tailspin of some type of drugs or alcohol or, some negative downward spiral.
Right, right.
So it's pretty impressive you can incorporate the rock and roll world, especially with some of the names listed, and be on the positive side of it.
Exactly. That's true. Yeah, that's true. Well, that's the way I wanted to focus it. I mean, there's a little bit of it's not a perfectly G-rated book. I would say it's rated PG-13 because I talk about in 2002 when Cynthia Plaster-Caster brought her display to Soho. I talk about her Plaster-Caster thing, and there are some stories that I talk a little bit about sex, but it's not like one of these depressing, oh no, and now I'm trying to commit suicide. It's like nothing like that at all. It's just very upbeat. It is an adult book, but it's very upbeat through the whole thing.
Cool. Two of the clubs you mentioned, legendary clubs, right on the cover. And actually, we kind of we started the show. We were talking about old stadiums and arenas, and being knocked down or deserted, and I mean that's two right there, CBGB's and Max's, two of the most popular rock clubs of all time. Definitely on the East Coast, and they're no longer with us. And we see that more and more. There's really no more of those standard of clubs, shall we say, left. I mean, there's a couple out in L.A., but it's everybody you talk to anymore in L.A., they're like, the scene's dead.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think anything's dead. I think if you want something and you look for it, I mean, I'm 50 years old, so I'm just happy spending a night with my husband and the cat at home with a glass of wine. But, I mean, there are clubs you could go out to see bands. There are great new bands. You just have to look for them, It's not so much in your face because what's popular, what we see on television, American Idol, and all this stuff that's so homogenized, that's part of the real world, but that's not all of it. There are great bands out there, and a lot of them. You just have to dig.
Yeah, there's definitely a ton of great bands all around. There's just no there's no more CBGB type clubs. You know what I mean?
Yeah, not like it used to be, and not only about CBGBs and Maxes, but even in New Jersey, you could go so many places on any given night. It could be a Monday, it could be a Wednesday. God, when I was young, I was out every night of the week, and then by the time Saturday night rolled around, I was exhausted. That would be my night to stay home and sleep because I was out Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, But it's not like that anymore, but maybe it is,
Now, you also wrote for The Aquarian, right?
Uh-huh. Yep, The Aquarian Arts Weekly.
Was that the East Coast Rocker? Is that what the East Coast Rocker? Okay.
Yeah, the East Coast Rocker. It was like Aquarian, then they changed it to East Coast Rocker, then it was the Aquarian again, and that's when I was writing for it, when it was the Aquarian.
Okay. Because I that was in the 80s. That was my favorite thing. Every week I'd run out and grab it.
Exactly.
And I grew up 2 blocks from the legendary Tower Theater outside of Philadelphia. So there was a little newsstand, and they were the only people that would carry it. And I would buy it every week, and I would love just to read the all the club listings of all the bands, just like you said. There'd be L'Amour's and the bands, the clubs in North Jersey, and I was just like, oh my God, what a scene that is going on up there. I mean, to be part of that must have been incredible.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, it was just so much fun back then. In New York, we had the Peppermint Lounge, you had the Ritz. There was a club called Interferon, which later became Danceteria. You had the Irving Plaza. Every night there was something going on, and for such little money, you could go to the Peppermint Lounge for $5. You could see Lydia Lunch warm up for Susie and the Banshees for just $5. Now, come on, you can't beat that. Life was good. Life was good.
Now, you had to, over the years, become very close with a lot of these people. A lot of.
No, not at all.
No?
Not at all. No, it was just work. Yeah, it was just work. The only person that actually, I wouldn't say close, but I actually went to their home recently with Stu, the original drummer from the Plasmatics. He was the first person ever to put me on the guest list because I went to meet them at a record store in New Jersey, and he asked me, "Oh, are you going to the show tonight?" And back then, back in 1981, the drinking age, I think I was 17 and the drinking age was 18 or 19, and they didn't have all ages shows like they did today. If you didn't have that ID, you couldn't get in the club. There were no bracelets for people who were, of age. It was like you were. It was like, a war zone. You could not pass that. So I told him, I said, I'm only 17. I would love to go to the show, but I'm not going to be able to get in. He not only put me on the guest list, he put a bunch of my friends on the guest list. So we're all these underage people going in to see them. And I wrote about that in my book. And before my book came out, he found the story on the blog, and he reached out to me. He said, "Wow, you're writing a book and you're including the original Plasmatics?" I said, "Oh, absolutely." I said, Stu, I said, I was a bullied teenager, and you putting me on the guest list meant so much to me. And I felt so important. I was 17 years old, and you were the cool older kid that did something so nice for me and my friends. You best believe I'm putting you in this book. And he actually invited my husband and I to go to his home, and we spent a day with him. And he was bringing out all the old Plasmatic stuff. He has his original drum kit. I touched the original Butcher Baby mask. He was showing us all these ads, all these Plasmatics ads, and we were just blown away. I left feeling so euphoric. I said, this was really a wonderful visit. And he invited us to come back again. So I guess, he's the one I was close with.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Now, going back and writing the book, and a lot of the bands you touched on, like the Plasmatics and the Ramones, and David Johansen, which he's still alive, but Johnny Thunders, Jerry Nolan. Like, sadly, all these people are now gone. Did it bring up any memories and just being like, wow, I can't believe they're gone?
Well, the one that hurt me the most, because I became friends with her. This is another one I became close with. You forget things after a while till people start bringing them up. Serinda Fox, I met her at one of the Punk magazine parties in later years, about 2 years before she died, and John Holmstrom from Punk magazine wanted me to interview her because we got along so well. Serinda and I really hit it off. So I said, yeah, sure, John, I would be honored to interview her. And I was the last person to interview her before she died. And I was in her apartment. She was staying at the Gramercy Park Hotel, and she had lost all her hair to chemo, and she just had this handkerchief on her head, and still she was so gorgeous. And we talked for 4 hours, and she didn't want me to leave. She was crying because she knew she was dying, and she was holding my hand, and it was very upsetting for me, and I just didn't want to stay any longer. And she begged me not to go. Please stay. My boyfriend's going to be coming here, shortly. Could you stay? And I said, no, Serinda, I'm sorry. I have things to do. I have to get back to New Jersey. And when she died about a year later, I was very choken up. And every year around the time that she died, it would upset me because she was such a nice girl. She was a very girly girl. She loved clothes and shoes. And I had these beautiful Betty Page burgundy high heel shoes on, and she liked them so much she touched them. And she says, "Oh, I have to touch your shoes. They're so beautiful." And to this day, the shoes are all scuffed up, but I won't get rid of them because Serinda touched them.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's one of the stories in my blog.
That's an incredible story right there. Yeah, that's an incredible story right there.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm getting a little choked up thinking about it because she was just so nice and so funny and so real. She was so honest. I knew she liked me because if she didn't like you, she would let you know. That's the kind of person she was,
Wow. Now, are you still doing any music journalist work still today?
I would say no because I'm so busy with the book and the promotions. I'm working on my second book, which also has a music theme, though it's fiction. It's a fiction story. But I do a lot of journalism, not a lot because I'm so busy now with promoting the book and all. I maybe twice a month I actually do some community writing for online, the Patterson Press. I like to go into Patterson because it's not very well known as a good place, but there are so many good things happening in Patterson, a lot of positive things. So I like to go in there in the community and write all the good stuff that's happening.
That's cool. That's very
yeah. It's
you
known
are
for
like
crime, but
right.
I like to overlook that.
You are like the positive the writer.
Yeah.
All positive from you.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, I get that from my grandmother. My grandmother had diabetes. She was 76 years old. She lost her leg, but she still went on roller coasters. She would go see Elvis impersonators and flirt with them. When he'd sing, "Are you lonesome tonight? Not if you're going to come home with me, baby." That's like the personality my grandmother had, so I take after her. I just have like a lust for life. I like to live in this constant state of euphoria, and I'm silly and fun and just a goofy person.
That's good. I mean, because you think about it, most writers, they're usually looking for the negative in the story to get the attention.
Yes,
they're looking
that's
for
true.
something dirty and nasty and that they can capitalize on, where you're just writing good, positive stories.
Yeah, although sometimes I have some funny stories. One time I was interviewed, and I'm sorry I forgot his name because I don't watch the show, even though I'm from New Jersey. I interviewed the guy from The Sopranos, the one who made the sauce. I forgot which one he was because I feel so bad I didn't watch it. But he actually confessed to me that he was a food fence. And I said, "Is this off the record or on the record?" He said, No, it's on the record. I said, "Really? I could put this in the story?" And he said, "Yeah." So I wrote about him, being in organized crime, being a food fence. And it was just like the managing editor said, "Are you sure he said it was okay?" I said, Yes, he gave me his word. I could put it in. So sometimes something leaks in that's a little bit naughty, but it's okay because I make sure that it's okay. Are you sure?
Now, I saw you do a lot of lectures as well.
Uh-huh.
Now, and you have like a list on your site of like themes of lectures that you do.
Uh-huh.
And I was going through them, and one of them stood out immediately, and it's a tribute to comedian Andy Kaufman.
I love Andy Kaufman. I read like every single book on him, so I want to like write a lecture and present it. Nobody asked me to present that lecture yet, so it's not even written yet, but I will write that lecture and I will do it someplace down the line. I'm sure I could feel it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Because I saw it, I was like, wow, Andy Kaufman, that would be interesting.
Yeah, I just thought he was so much fun, and I love the mystery that surrounds his life, and I thought he was a good-looking guy, too. A lot of people, you're crazy. I said, no, he's cute.
How about, it was probably about 6 months ago, where they did the thing, I guess the tribute out in California they do at the Comedy Club, and the girl came up on stage saying she was Andy's daughter and Andy's still alive.
Oh, I remember that. What was the outcome? Do you remember what the outcome was?
I think it was all just a plant.
Oh, okay.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, it was a plant, but yeah, I mean, stuff like that. Like, I mean, because it was Andy, his brother. The girl came up on stage while Andy Kaufman's brother was on stage. Like, it was all done well, and it put his name back out there, and interest was drummed up again. And with Andy Kaufman, who knows? He could still be alive and laughing at us all.
Yes, that's true.
That's funny. So the book. So where can we get the book?
The book is on Amazon.
Good old Amazon. Amazon rules the world.
Yes. And I have 7 good reviews on there, so anybody else that brought the book, and I know there are many because I just got a royalty check, so I know many of you brought the book. If you like it or hate it, just please write a review.
Yeah, that's the big thing, and my co-host Nick, who is also an author and has written a couple books, and he's got his 3rd book getting ready to come out, and I know he's going to kick me in the ass because he asks me all the time, "Can you please write a review for me on Amazon? Can you please write a review on me?"
What's his book?
The book
There you go. They plug your books.
The book's called Child Abuse: The Ripple Effect, and it's a self-help book for survivors of child abuse.
Oh, that's so cool.
And you got your other book, too.
I do. I do have another comedy book out there as well, and that's From Here to Obesity, and it's just sort of a journal style. It's really just comedy and me dealing with being diagnosed with type 2 diabetes and stuff like that.
If he's local, I could help him with the type 2 diabetes. I know some amazing doctors.
Unfortunately, I'm in Phoenix, Arizona.
Oh, okay. Oh, too bad. But Phoenix is gorgeous. I've been there.
It is. It's wonderful.
Yeah,
it gets
that's
too
awesome. Hot. Yeah, too hot. I hope you have a pool.
Yeah.
Now, another question I got to ask, because as I see pictures of you, you look familiar, and I'm got to ask, have you ever been down to the Philly area for shows?
No, never.
No?
Okay. No. I've been there, but not for shows. In fact, one night that I went down there, I was supposed to see the Psychedelic Furs at the Hard Rock Cafe, and for some reason it was canceled. But then that was my experience with Philly. So a canceled show, but walked around the town, and I loved it. I thought it was great. I thought it was a great town.
Look at that. You turned the negative into a positive again. You can't help yourself.
Yeah, well, there's always something to do. If you're a creative person, your mind's always going,
This is true. Well, Maryanne, this has been a lot of fun. I want to thank you for being our guest.
Oh, thank you so much. I had a great time.
And I have to get the book because I want to read these stories. You already got me hooked on the one story, so now I have to buy the book and read the rest. Oh,
thank you so much. And we're friends on Facebook now, so we can have a lot of fun on Facebook.
There you go, absolutely. So everybody needs to go to Amazon.com, The Ruler of the World, and buy On the Guest List by Maryanne, and it's Maryanne Christiano Mistretta, a true Italian.
Yes. Oh, and it's called On the Guest List, Adventures of a Music Journalist, because I think somebody else wrote an On the Guest List book. I think it was a band. It could have been the Vibrators, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was the Vibrators. They had a book on the guest list.
It's not as good as yours.
Oh, thank you. Oh.
So there you go. Cool.
All right, great. Nice talking to you.
You too, Maryanne.
Okay,
thanks.
have a nice night.
When the new book comes out, we'll have to get you back on.
Oh, that sounds great. I'd love to.
Awesome.
Okay,
thanks
take
so
care.
much.
Bye-bye.
You too. Bye. All right, everybody, there she goes. Maryanne Christiano Mistretta, the author of On the Guest List, The Adventures of a Music Journalist. Buy it on Amazon. Legendary bands she got to see and write about and interview.
You know what, we were joking around or whatever, but I guarantee you that she has less bad days than the rest of us. Like, she's so positive and just turns it around. You know what I mean?
Yeah. If more people in the world were like her, this world would truly be a happier place.